Hello, what is up, everybody? My name is Mario Pichardo. Today, we're going to be taking a look at an article out of the Daily Mail. It's about Venezuela, the things that are happening in Venezuela, and the from the perspective of a couple of gang members. So there was some reporting, some kind of investigative reporting that was being done over at the Daily Mail. It follows Venezuela's murderous Proud Boys gang, who make their living by kidnapping in one of the world's most violent cities, Caracas, have given an astonishing interview, shedding light on the reality of life inside the failing socialist state. It goes on to say, the gangsters make money by kidnapping ordinary citizens off the street and demanding ransoms that can be as little as a car or fancy watch. But such meager items still represent a tidy profit in the impoverished nation. Venezuela has been ruled by Russian-backed Nicolas Maduro for 5 years, and the country was at the center of a standoff between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump this year, as the White House tried to support Juan Guaido, who claimed to have won an election. So here's an image of one of the guys who's a gangster in the area. And the article just goes on to kind of detail how the prices in Venezuela have gone all out of whack. It says here, this is the guy speaking, if you empty your clip, you're shooting off $15, says El Negrito, speaking to the Associated Press on the condition he be identified only by his street name and photographed wearing a hoodie and face mask to avoid attracting unwelcome attention. He says, you lose your pistol or the police take it and you're throwing away $800. So really immediately right there, the article goes on to mention that the income for Venezuelan citizens is something like $6.50 a month. And so to contrast that to Western nations is $6.50 sometimes can't even buy you lunch. So to have to live off of that, especially in a family setting or in a family, when you have to pay for a lot of other people, that is impossible in Western society. And so you can only think, that only leads you to think about what the average Venezuelan is able to really buy or purchase. We're not talking about a country that has a lot of money. And what was interesting, I thought, was the mention of the economy, because they talk about how Venezuela used to be a wealthy nation before, Maduro and Hugo Chavez before him, who started to push all of these socialistic policies within the country. And it just goes on to kind of show you the poison that socialism brings into society, that you can't just seek to equalize for the issues that a society faces, because socialism is a system of taking from the rich or the haves and trying to give that to the people who don't have. But it doesn't understand how economics works. When they take away resources from the rich, that means that fewer people are going to get hired. The economy is going to slow down. It can't innovate at the same rate. When rich people get money, they don't just hoard the money. They don't just put all their money under their mattress. No, they reinvest it so that they can make more money, or they spend it into the economy, or they do hold on to it. But whatever the rich person decides to do, 9 times out of 10, the money gets recycled into the system. And I think a lot of, socialists don't understand that. And, that's partially a failing of our schooling systems. They don't really teach economics thoroughly to our youth and help them to understand how politics and economics are intertwined, and to even follow historical trends for how different economic systems have affected different societies through time. so many socialistic countries, or countries that have gone on to push more and more social programs, have ended up failing, because what ends up happening is that countries spend themselves into a huge deficit, like the United States is partially doing with social security, where the 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 current payouts that would go out to citizens, um, there isn't there will not, we're going to hit a point where there aren't going to be enough people putting taxes into the social security system to be able to pay for the people who are retiring now. And so immediately, even in the US, which is a capitalistic system, and the wealthiest country in the world ever, that the world's ever seen, cannot even afford to pay for social security. And that's a social program built on top of a capitalistic system. And it speaks to how it speaks to the fact that socialism just does not work. It costs too much money. In every economic system in which large social programs have gone into effect, the worth of a person's dollar has always crashed. Of that country, the currency of that country has always ended up crashing as a result of the widespread spending that socialism brings upon a nation. So here, even here above, this gangster is talking. El Negrito says the hyperinflation has disrupted his bloody track record, and firing his gun has become an expensive luxury. 10 bolivars, now worth just $1, used to get you a gun. Now that doesn't even get you a pack of cigarettes. So, immediately right there, that shows you hyperinflation. Where does hyperinflation even come from? Well, there's a book that I have here. I don't have it in front of me, but there's a book called Gold and Silver by Mike Maloney, and Mike in that book, he really makes the case for real wealth. And he says real wealth is in precious metals, not currencies of countries, fiat currencies, he calls them. And they're called fiat currencies because you could just keep printing them. You can just keep making more of them if you want to. But that's the issue, is that the value of something is determined based on its quantity, or how much of it exists. And so the rarer something is, and the harder it is to reproduce something, the more valuable it becomes. And so with a precious metal, for example, like gold or silver, Mike Maloney makes the case that, well, because you can't reproduce gold and silver, you can in a lab, through kind of nuclear processes, you just won't get a great yield. In other words, it's so expensive to reproduce it alchemically that it's not even worth it. But to mine it and to dig it out of the ground, well, we already know that there's a finite resource of it. And so gold and silver as precious metals have a finite intrinsic value, and contrasted to fiat currencies, which are like the US dollar or the euro, which is just something that we can continue to make more of. We can print it, we can stamp it, we can do whatever we want to it. But essentially, there's nothing stopping us from printing more of them. And what that means is that the value of them, of these bills or these notes, can always go down simply because there's so many of them. And when we get into something like hyperinflation, what happens is that we print so many of a particular currency, of a fiat currency like the US dollar, that the value of it starts to go down over time. We've seen that in the US, and we've seen that abroad. And over time in history, what ends up happening is every time we start up with all these social programs for whatever reason, let's say that the country just has a surplus of money. Usually what we do is the politicians go up and then they say, well, elect me because I'll give you all of this free stuff. And so they promise all of these social programs. Well, there's a cost. There's a cost associated with attempting to give the people so many free things. Somebody has to cover the cost. And so they promise the people, let's say, Social Security. And so everybody's going to get Social Security. You know, it happens at a time where the U.S. has incredible amounts of money. And so they feel confident in making that decision. You know, and later on, someone's going to have to fit the bill and say, okay, we can't afford this anymore. And so we have to cut this program. And so, well, historically, when that time has come to start to cut these social programs, no one wants to do it because it's political suicide. And so what happens is, okay, now we have all these social programs, but we're spending ourselves to death. We're not going to have enough money to keep the government open. And so what ends up happening is, as a response, the government says, well, let's print more money to cover the costs, to cover all of our deficits. And so that's exactly what they do. And so just like what happened in Venezuela, you get a hyperinflation where you're printing so many dollars to pay off all of these debts, to pay off anything that's owed, that the value of the dollar or the bolivar goes down to such a degree where even a single dollar is worth nothing, where like a $10 bill, $10 US bill ends up being worth less than a dime, because a dime has a small amount of silver in it or a small amount of something else. And so what ends up happening is, and this has happened all throughout history, this isn't a new thing, right? Every single fiat currency that came in the past has historically always gone to zero, always. And so when you really think about it, it tells you, wow, like the humans have a sick, like we don't learn from history, because it just continues to happen again and again, where we introduce social programs. We form a socialistic nation because our politicians, they're going to promise the people things are going to get better. We're going to introduce all of these programs that'll make everyone, everybody's poor. They'll rise up from being poor, and everything will be great. They end up spending themselves into oblivion. They run out of money. Their economic system collapses, and then they need some kind of way to start over. But there's a lot of pain and suffering in between, because people starve to death. There's not enough money for food, things like that. A lot of that happens. Sometimes companies are just countries are just conquered, taken over during that time. But this story about Venezuela is just another one of those socialism stories where it just fails and it crashes and it burns, and it just doesn't work out. And so, they go on here to talk about it. It's a crime-laden country. The Maduro, the guy in charge in Venezuela, stopped reporting the crime statistics. So we don't even know how many people now are, how many crimes are being committed. We don't know any of that right now. We haven't known it for a while. Here are more pictures of just really the state of Venezuela. And I just want to point out that, this happens all the time. This happens all the time when we introduce socialism into our societies without a firm understanding of what socialism has done in the past. It's never worked. And a lot of people on the left like to say, yeah, but it wasn't real socialism because it didn't have this, or it was like this, or these circumstances were different. It's always happened. This is what socialism does. And it doesn't have to do with specific circumstances. It has to do with economics and human nature and human psychology. Socialism is a failed system. It's a failed system, and it can only exist. A socialistic system can only exist. The communist system can only exist if it's partially based off of, or at least something has to be based off of, capitalism. It has to have a capitalistic component, because you have to have a system that is built off of, or incentivizes people to work harder, to want to achieve something. When you take away that element of rewarding people for working harder, then they're not going to work harder. It's simple. It's a very simple issue. And, and economics will tell us that. Economics will tell us that we can't afford to pay for all of these things. So here they just go on and talk about some of the other issues that was faced by Venezuela, that is being faced by Venezuela, the homicide rate and things like that. Here it says that the crime rate's actually gone down a little bit. So we'll see what happens here. I mean, we'll continue to monitor what goes on in Venezuela and in other areas. But thank you guys for watching. If you guys like the video, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell icon so that you're notified the next time we post a video that goes live. Also, any comment that you make on the video tells YouTube, I know I say this all the time, but it really does help. It tells YouTube, hey, this video is awesome. And so YouTube says, okay, a lot of people think this is cool. We're going to share this with more people. And that obviously helps out the channel. So if you guys like the content, please feel free to do that, or don't. You don't have to help the channel out in any way. Even just watching it is plenty. That helps plenty enough. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.